Hello friends, my name is Shivam from DevOps Schools and I will help you to enable your learning process in various technologies of DevOps, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data and many more. This is our initiative to help you by sharing multiple tutorials and videos. And if you want any specific tutorials or any particular topic, then please do comment in the below comment section and I will help you with it. Also, please subscribe to our premium services on YouTube, which will give you access to more content and videos to enhance your knowledge about all these topics. Also, if you want me to help you with regards to the online trainings and classroom sessions by our qualified trainers, then please do write me at contact@devopsschool.com. Thank you.
Because A1 doesn't normally need administrative permissions, but you may sometime have to perform tasks that requires administrative permissions. So you can assume roles in that requirement. User A1 assumes the admin role and gets access to the S3 bucket. A user assumes role temporarily gives up his own permissions and takes the permission of that role. This is what it happens. If user A1 is having some permissions, then it is assuming role for doing that transaction. It will give up the other permissions what it has and it assumes this permission.
Okay.
Similarly, if a user on account B assumes a role from this user, from this account, he will get access to the bucket even in spite being from the other account.
Okay.
Other than these roles and things, you can also have a service called STS. AWS STS is something which gives you secured transactions, secured temporary keys. So this STS is also useful when you want to give some temporary security credentials for external users. This can expire in any duration between 15 minutes to 36 hours. So this is like a sort of temporary credential sharing. It is called a secured token service by the way. Okay. So secured token service is temporary security service which is allowed for users to use. It provides now, but again, if you want to give STS based access also, your user should be authenticated before it gets this STS. Now, authentication can be done by your corporate identities or your social media accounts. Anything can be used for authentication. STS is used for authorization. So once a trusted user comes in, STS can provide temporary security credentials and gives you controlled access to your AWS resources. These credentials are short term and will expire as your expiry limit what you set. Okay. So what are the use cases? Common use cases are cross account access. If you want to give, you can use this, or if you want to give access to the federated users, you can give that. Mobile users can use it, or if you want to enable something like key rotation for EC2 based apps, you can give this access using STS. So how does STS work? So this is how the STS is useful. But authentication, when I say authentication, it doesn't mean the OS authentication or application authentication. OS authentication will be done only for the users which are created on the OS. Like in the examples what we have seen, I did not use programmer to authenticate to my EC2 instance, right? So I used EC2-user to authenticate in the user. Why? Because the IAM rules are not meant for OS level or application level authentication. I hope you are understanding that. So I used EC2-user here.
So you're saying
Sorry.
So the credentials that we use to log into the console is different than the one that we are using to connect to the system.
Yes,
Or
if you remember in the examples what we have seen, I did not use programmer to authenticate in my EC2 instance, right? I use EC2-user
right.
because EC2-user is the user created on OS.
Okay. Right.
Even if you have a WordPress application and WordPress has their own user management which is created, so you will not use IAM user for working on that. You will use just the users which are there on WordPress.
Okay.
So AWS IAM authentication and authorization. IAM is a service for using for doing authentication authorization of the resources. You can use IAM if you want to use management console, use username password. If you want to do CLI or SDK based authentication, use access key and secret key. This is for authentication, and for authorization, you always use policies. And then there are some best practices. You delete AWS root access keys. Root access keys shouldn't be available, because if you have root access key available, programmatically anyone can initiate a request for maybe 10,000 EC2 instances, and you are in the spot to pay that as a user. So you delete that. You create individual IAM users like I did for programmer. Use groups to assign permissions to IAM users. Grant least privilege. It is always recommended that you give least privilege, which is required for that user to fulfill his activities. And configure a strong password policy. You can always have policy for password rotation, password expiry, what should be the length of the password. All that policies you can determine. And enable MFA for privileged users. Multi-factor authentication is mandatory for, I mean, it's not mandatory, but highly recommended for you to do that. You can use devices like this for doing the multi-factor authentication, or you can use any software generated tokens as well, or like Google Authenticator can be used for generating dynamic keys for your authentication. You use roles for applications that run on EC2 instances. Delegate by using roles instead of by sharing credentials. You should never share credentials. Rather, you should create roles and assign roles to the user to access any resource. Rotate credentials regularly. Remove unnecessary users and credentials. Use policy conditions for extra security, and always monitor activity in your AWS account. Then there is this service called CloudTrail. CloudTrail is a service which records all API calls for your accounts. So you can use this CloudTrail if you are having more than one user, multiple users are using your account. Enable CloudTrail and record your API calls for everything what happens. You can deliver that log files to S3 buckets. Okay, your log files can go inside your S3 buckets, and you can make calls using management console or SDK or CLI or whatever way you make your calls. CloudTrail can monitor that. Okay. Now let's do a quick knowledge check. Your AWS web application, your web application needs to read write an Amazon Dynamo table. Okay, and a DynamoDB table you want to read and write, and an Amazon S3 bucket. Your application needs to read and write to these two resources, DynamoDB table and S3 bucket. This operation requires AWS credentials and authorization to use services. What IAM entity should be used here?
Role policy. Role or policy? Role. I think role.
It is for these two resources, right?
Yeah.
So you will use a role, and the role will have a policy.
Yeah.
And your role can be assumed by your application, your DynamoDB, your S3 bucket.
Right.
All right, so let me show a quick demo of IAM. In fact, we just had a demo briefly, but if you want, we can again have a look at that. So on your IAM, this is your dashboard. So once you create your new account, this security status, you have to complete that. You have to apply a password policy. You have to use groups to assign permissions. You have to create individual IAM users, enable MFA on your root account, and delete your root access key. I haven't deleted it yet, so it is showing this alert, but you have to do that if you want to. So look at the groups which you have. I have these groups. You can create new groups as well. Then what policies should be attached to that group? Okay, so you have these many policies. Again, this is numerous. You don't want to remember everything. I will simply say Amazon S3 full access. So this is a policy which I am assigning to that group. Now the policy S3 full access is given, and then this group is created. Now when this policy is assigned to this group, now I gave it as a DB user, right? I should have named it as S3 user. So I will have to drop this user, or maybe I can create another user with that access. So this group has no user, by the way. So I don't have to worry about that. I can simply leave it, or I can delete the group also. I'll delete the group. I'll create a new group. Okay, my S3 admins. Now I will give one policy, S3 full access, which means that the policy is there for doing anything on S3. Now create this group. Now this group has no users. I'll add user here. I'll add only one user, programmer here, because this root user will have access to everything. Root user can do anything and everything. So I give this admin access to programmer. So there you see in permissions I have policy. I can attach new policies as well. I can say anything else with respect to S3. I don't have any other than that, because if I give full access, I get everything. That is enough for my requirement currently. And this is the user. Now I can go to users. This user is now, look at this, programmer is part of two groups. One is system admins and one is my S3 admin. So he is part of two groups now. Then on roles front, I don't have any custom roles. So these are the roles which are already there in AWS. Then if you talk about policies, you asked me about policy description as well. So if you want to create new policies, you have this editor, you see. You use the visual editor, or you can do the JSON type as well.
Okay.
If you use visual editor, choose a service. I will say API gateway. Choose action. I'll say access level, read write. or I can say all API gateway actions. I'll say read and write explicitly. So what resources should be given this policy? Then conditions. I'll not select any of these right now. I'll say review policy.
If we don't select, does it give it to all resources or no resources?
No. You can always attach that on the fly.
Okay.
It gives it to no resources. In fact, it doesn't give it to any resource. It is by default denied.
Okay.
So if you review the policy, okay. Now API gateway full access. If name of this policy, my API gateway policy for users. API create policy. So this policy is created. If you want, you can see it here, but it is showing all policies, right? So you have to search mainly for that. My API gateway policy. Yes, this is my policy. And what is there in this policy? It is simply giving access to my API gateway. Now, you may not want to do that if you have only one policy, because if you already have, if you are using only one policy, what is the use of having a policy, custom policy? You could have simply used API gateway full access, right? But in cases where you have more than one access, more than one permissions to be specified, you will use custom policies. Otherwise, the default policies can still be good enough for you. So here the JSON document looks something like this. Allow these actions. So these resources I give it on the API gateway, but if you want now you can edit the policies also. If you want to see what the usage of the policy, how it is used, you can do that here. You can attach that policy to any other user or a role or a group. If you want to attach the policy to a group, for example, now I will say it is only for programmer, attach this policy. It is done. Then you have, if you want to use external identity providers, you can do that. I don't have anything. This is out of the scope for this course, by the way. This is how your AWS IAM typically looks like. So what you have to carry away from this discussion is what are groups, what are users, what are roles, what are policies, and that should be enough for this. Any questions?
No, I'm good.
All right. This is sort of end of that module. In the next module, we will talk about fourth module. We will talk about the databases. So here we will have labs after this module. So let me activate and pre-warm those labs for you. Give me a couple of minutes. Give me a minute. I'm not able to pre-warm the labs. I think there is some change. I'll start in 2 minutes. If you want, you can take a 5-minute break. And in the meantime, I'll do the activation and pre-warming of these labs.
Sure.
All right, guys. I have done your hot labs request. It is getting pre-warmed. So in this lab, because we have, are you guys back?
Yeah. I'm back
right.
at least. Not sure about Neha.
Let's hear from her. So you both are part of the same team?
No, different teams.
And you are working as a QA, right?
No, I'm a developer. She's a QA.
Okay. All right. Neha is back as well. Fine. So what was I talking about? Yeah. So this lab, this module will have, we will work on databases, right? So there was a requirement where we will pre-create some databases for you to use. So that lab is activated now. We can move forward. So in your applications, when you are required to select your databases, you have a choice to make whether you want to do SQL or NoSQL database. The standard choice even when you come to AWS. So you have SQL and NoSQL, both the options are there. I mean, I will not talk much about what SQL and NoSQL means, but at a high level, I can tell you SQL will have rows and columns, and it will be a fixed schema, and you will query that using SQL language, and the scalability is vertical. Whereas if you talk about NoSQL, NoSQL will have key value pair sort of data storage, not in traditional rows and columns. And schemas can be dynamic. You don't have to have a fixed schema for that. You can query based on collection sort of way, where you can query for documents within a collection, and scalability can be horizontal. So a typical example, if you look at the bottom images on the slide, a SQL will look like a traditional SQL will look like this, where you have rows and columns in this format, and NoSQL will look like a document where you have the same example can be translated like this: ISBN number, title, author, format is mentioned in form of a document. Okay. What are the things you have to consider for data storage? So data storage, you have to consider that no one size fits all requirements when considering databases. So you have to take into consideration the data requirements, data formats, data size, the frequency of your queries, how quickly do you need your data, the data access speed as well is important, and how long do you want to retain your data. So the data retention period is also something which you have to consider for choosing the database. So AWS managed database services, RDS is managed database services. So what is a managed database service? In general, managed services means it is managed by AWS for you. You don't have to manage that. That's it. So in databases, AWS has these offerings, managed services. On the right hand side, you look at the list of services which are offered: DynamoDB, Elasticache, Amazon RDS, Aurora, Neptune, Redshift. They are all managed services available from AWS. And when it comes, what do you mean by managed services? So your infrastructure, network, compute, storage, and database, all these are managed. You can have managed services in these formats. So what is RDS? Let's talk about what is RDS at a high level. AWS provides you a cost-efficient and resizable capacity for hosting your databases. With RDS, you can access full capabilities similar to your MySQL, MariaDB, Microsoft SQL, Oracle, Postgres, SQL databases. So RDS provides you access to the capabilities, all capabilities of these databases which are listed here in this slide. Okay. You can, in addition, you can use the multi-AZ deployments, read the replicas to get a high availability and fault tolerance in your databases. So this is your traditional relational database service. So these are the external services. MariaDB, MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle are all third-party services except Amazon Aurora. Aurora is something which is native to Amazon. It is a homegrown product and it is also a relational database. But Aurora is very much similar to your MySQL. It is fully compatible to MySQL. So what is RDS? RDS is a simple and fast to deploy service. It manages common capabilities of all the services which are listed here. It is interoperable with MySQL, Postgres, Microsoft SQL Server, Amazon Aurora, MariaDB, and Oracle. Okay. It makes it easy for you to set up and operate and scale relational database in cloud. It provides cost-efficient and resizable capacity while managing time-consuming administrative tasks. Okay. It manages common database administrative tasks. You may not have to do all that low-level administrative tasks for yourself when you're using RDS as a managed service. So you will simply focus on your business and applications. RDS gives you full access to full capabilities of Oracle, MySQL, etc. This means that the code, applications, and tools which you are already using today, you might not have to change it. If you are using RDS, and if your application, if you are migrating from an application which is already using Oracle, for example, you may not have to change anything in your application. You will simply start using RDS and you will go to cloud within minutes. So if you are using RDS, it does the administrative tasks like patching of databases and all. At a low level, those tasks are done and you are relieved from doing that. Okay. So what do you get? You get it is compatible with your applications. It is fast and predictable performance because it is on Amazon's infrastructure and it is managed service. You don't have to worry about the performance. It gives you a predictable performance. It is fast, obviously. It is simple and fast to scale. It is secure and cost efficient. So at the bottom of the installations, when you are installing any service on Amazon, when you are installing any DB on the Amazon, DB2 instances are the basic building block of RDS. DB2 instances are similar to your EC2 instances. Okay. So if you are creating a VM, you will do EC2 instance, right?
Please enroll our general membership for $399 plan to get access of all the parts.
Along with that, you can access our other tutorials such as Docker, Ansible, Jenkins, Terraform, Splunk, AWS, Azure, and various other DevOps related premium tutorials with our channel membership. If you would have any issues with our channel membership, you can drop an email to us at contact@devopschool.com, or you can also unsubscribe from channel membership anytime if you don't want to continue or did not like the video. To get our channel membership, click onto the join button, select the $399 plan and grow your skills immensely. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries. We will reply to them at the earliest. Thanks for watching.